At times, Blue Lock is an incredibly stupid show. Yes, I love when athletes stop in the middle of a play to speak for a couple seconds. It's totally something you see in actual athletics, and not corny at all. Blue Lock sometimes fails to demonstrate even elementary understandings of football, but shockingly, that doesn't get in the way of it being very profound. Often the show feels like it's talking about a video game representation of sports, which on one hand can be very annoying, but on the other, surprisingly, I found myself interested in football for the first time in my entire life after watching Blue Lock. So despite all my criticism, they obviously did something right. I have a previous video I released a while back that talks about why I was surprised at how good Blue Lock actually ended up being. But today I want to talk about 3 different points that Blue Lock made across its first season that ranged from game theory to learning theory. Little moments that were shockingly profound when surrounded by total bullshit. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about growth, ego, and luck. Part of the reason I like Blue Lock as much as I do is because it feels like it's unapologetically trying to be itself. It embraces its shortcomings with zero shame and creates an incredibly fun environment for a story to be explored. Other shows that fill a similar role either don't swing for the fences, or when they do, miss in a way that kind of ruins it. But with Blue Lock, there was a couple times that they ventured into these bigger concept ideas, and I was shocked at how well they held up. The first being the entire premise of the show, ego. Blue Lock is about a battle royale tournament with the ultimate goal of creating a world-class striker for Japan's national football team. From the very beginning of the show, they argue that to be world-class in a competitive sport like football, you have to have a certain degree of ego. I think this is actually super insightful because there's truth in it. For people to succeed in any field that has a 0.01% success rate, there has to be a little bit of ignorant self-belief. And that doesn't mean ignore obvious things right in front of you. There needs to be some form of tangible improvement and results that support that ego, especially for a position in football like being a striker. How many people have crumbled from the intense pressure that comes with extreme expectations and so much attention? There needs to be some degree of irrational confidence. And Blue Lock highlights that from the very start. That's the whole point of this competition. It also talks about some aspects of Japanese culture that in some ways make them more capable athletes, but in others get in the way. It's a surprisingly compelling premise for a show, especially given the fact that all of the information surrounding it didn't make much sense to me. A lot of plot decisions fall apart if you think a little bit too critically about the entire thing, but that's not the point. And I think Blue Lock does a really good job engaging in that. The second thing that I want to talk about today is their theory about improvement, because that's kind of the point of the Battle Royale, to take a lot of high potential high school strikers and put them in an environment that forces them to improve rapidly. Do you have that friend who's really good at video games? Sometimes it's really easy to oversimplify their skill to innate talent, and maybe there's components of that, but more often than not, people who naturally take to certain things like athletics or video games, anything with high competitive levels, have systems that help them improve rapidly. Because while a lot of skills transfer and being good at one skill can help with another, there's also just someone's ability to learn new things. That's the whole premise behind learning theory, a structure that helps you develop skills more effectively. There's this concept called X+1, sometimes also referred to as I+1. It was a term coined by Stephen Krashen in the 1970s, and essentially the whole premise is you want to take someone's skill level and then push them beyond that a little bit, and that's the most effective way for someone to learn. If it's too hard, more often than not, people will give up. But for example, teams at the top of a league don't improve as rapidly because they have no one pushing and challenging them. Oversimplified shorthand is that you want to find that sweet spot where you're being challenged, but not too much. This is why sometimes rivalries are so effective at improving skill. If you were to have someone developing alongside you at a similar rate that you felt competitive with, it's actually an incredibly effective way to help you develop faster. In Blue Lock, this is an essential part of the Battle Royale, that a bunch of skilled people are in an environment that is pushing each other to become better. In this highly and in some ways toxic environment, if people can't keep up, they get knocked out. But surviving that intense competitive environment and working hard and keeping up does build confidence, skill, and execution. It's actually pretty insightful and true that if you put yourself in situations that consistently force you to improve, you'll get better faster. Because central to improvement is sustainable discomfort. And despite a lack of understanding for how improvement in football tends to actually work, this was surprisingly insightful. So the final concept I want to talk about today is the one that I've seen most videos made about. It talks about the idea that while you can't control luck, you can influence it. Why do casinos consistently make money? Because odds are in their favor. Because as soon as you start focusing on what's within your range of influence and letting go of the things you can't control, you'll find you have more agency in circumstance than you realize. In Blue Lock, one of the more skilled football players finds themselves in a situation where there's nothing they can do but put themselves in a position to get lucky. And when the chips fall in their favor, most other people just chalk it up to luck. But in the show, when they take the time to analyze what happened in retrospect, they find that the person put themselves in a position to be lucky. Why can some NBA players, despite having a smaller stature, less strength, and being in a position that's not suited for rebounding, get so many rebounds? I would argue that a lot of these players have an insight, a court vision, where they play the odds. They go to empty space in the court where the ball could end up, and they give themselves opportunities to get lucky. Because so much in the world is out of our control. However, we have a choice in the way that we interact with those things. It's a sentiment that's been echoed to the point of cliche. Fight for the high ground. Position the sun behind you so you're less likely to be blinded by it. There's lots of examples, but Blue Lock showcases this in a very insightful way. Art can absolutely be a lie that tells the truth. I've learned a lot from media in my life, some of which has been really good and other stuff pretty crappy, and I've had to reteach myself. But to my chagrin, I was shocked to find out that Blue Lock is full of insight. Thank you.